CNN can now confirm that President Trump asked a number of his top foreign policy advisors last summer about the possibility of invading Venezuela. Trump aides vigorously pushed back against the idea, as did fellow Latin American leaders who allegedly told Trump they did not want to see a U.S. invasion.
They chant as these opposition protesters clash with riot police amidst escalating violence and a growing humanitarian crisis. Outrage over shortages of food, medicine, and now electricity. Earlier this week, a massive nationwide blackout left most of Venezuela in the dark. For this woman, no power means no respirator. Entire hospitals have gone dark. Embattled President Nicolas Maduro blamed the blackouts on American imperialism, tweeting he vows to fight the brutal aggression against our people, adding, "We will never surrender." U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blames Maduro for the humanitarian crisis, tweeting on Thursday, "No food, no medicine. Now, no power. Next, no Maduro."
But how do you interpret this news that Maduro's top military guy is sending his family away from Venezuela right now?
Well, I think that's a good sign. I think the general understands that the country is either on the verge of collapse or on the verge of major military action. So he seeks for his family what all of his 200,000 soldiers cannot have, which is safety. And so it's a cowardly move, but one that I think is a good signal for the United States, because either way, if they collapse, then that provides an opportunity to further isolate Maduro. And if they choose to fight, and if they choose to inject the Cuban trained folks that you just showed, and others from Russia and Iran and Hezbollah, then I think that's a good call for the United States to get militarily involved.
What do you mean this would be a precursor to military involvement?
Well, you know, one of the things, if the hit of the military is doing a non-combatant evacuation of his family, essentially, Trish, then he understands, he knows well that what is coming.
So, General, I mean, I asked Vice President Pence about that very issue yesterday, and he just reiterated that all options are on the table and made that very clear. But given your sources, given your experience and how you're watching this news cycle there play out, are we getting closer to possible military involvement?
I think we are, Trish.
Because you know what, Venezuela and the Venezuelans are getting anxious.
I think in the next 2 weeks, Trish, that we're going to see this thing bubble up and foment. The aid has to get in there. And importantly, President Trump has made this sort of a line in the sand. So he needs to do something that will affect, or he needs to set the conditions that will affect the transition to Guaido for power. And he's doing that through all the different elements of power. And just like Obama had the no chemical weapons and then didn't do anything about it, what we see is the president trying to do something to affect change so that Guaido takes power. And this is a defining moment because, you know, we need Guaido in charge there. We need to have good relationships with Venezuela, and we don't need Hezbollah, Iran, and Russia and Cuba involved in Venezuela to the extent
Okay, we're going to
that
turn
they
now
are.
to that breaking news overnight. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pulling all remaining U.S. diplomats out of Venezuela as the crisis there grows. Pompeo calling it a deteriorating situation, a power outage there.
Overnight, with Venezuela in chaos, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pulling all remaining U.S. diplomatic personnel out of the country. The secretary citing the deteriorating situation in Venezuela. The country now in a sixth day of a nationwide blackout, with hospitals crippled and darkened streets filled with protesters, people scavenging for whatever they can find, and looters. Families so desperate for water they are gathering at drainage pipes next to this contaminated river. Amid the blackouts, oil exports grinding to a halt, which is making Venezuela's economic crisis even worse. President Maduro addressing the blackout last night, accusing without evidence the United States of sabotaging the trouble as part of an alleged plot to overthrow the embattled leader. Juan Guaido, the opposition leader currently recognized as the country's president by more than 50 nations, including the U.S., declaring a state of emergency to allow foreign aid to come into Venezuela.
A day after violent clashes and hundreds of thousands called for his ouster and his election victory a sham, tonight Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says he is pulling his diplomats out of the U.S., while the Trump administration is refusing his demand that all American diplomats leave Venezuela.
The regime of former President Nicolas Maduro is illegitimate. We therefore consider all of its declarations and actions illegitimate and invalid.
Can the U.S. protect Americans there?
But if any harm should come to these diplomats from the United States, I want everybody to know that the consequences, I believe, from this administration that they'll impose will be swift and they'll be decisive.
The face-off between the U.S. and Venezuela escalating after President Trump recognized 35-year-old opposition leader Juan Guaido as interim president. He was out of sight today, possibly fearing arrest. Now a long list of countries joining the U.S. supporting Guaido.
This kleptocratic government, it's done terrible things, and so we want Venezuela to have a new start.
But Russia is propping up Maduro, whose government has sent the economy into freefall.
It's a very hard situation because we are very afraid. We don't know what is going to be our near future.
Tonight, Venezuela's generals threw their support behind Maduro, a major blow to the opposition. But many of the rank-and-file troops support the opposition as the country
Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro is ordering his military to prepare for a possible U.S. invasion. This is unfolding as the U.S. demands the embattled country open its borders for what they're saying is humanitarian aid.
Officials maintain their stance that all options are on the table, including military force. Now, at the same time, they, along with opposition leader Juan Guaido, are demanding Venezuela open its borders to deliveries of so-called humanitarian aid. While the Venezuelan government has sent troops to reinforce the bridge crossing, and the president of the Red Cross Society has called on all parties to not politicize humanitarian aid. So for now, the scenario seems to have reached a stalemate, but that could change at any moment.
Do you think we have crossed the Rubicon in Venezuela? If this U.S. intervention is, it seems, like all but inevitable.
Yes, and you asked me even a week ago whether the U.S. would militarily intervene in Venezuela. I would say highly unlikely. Slim to none would be the chances, because it seems absolutely foolhardy for many reasons. But it does appear, as you say, that a military intervention may be imminent, even though a number of countries, even Colombia, has expressed concern about such a strategy. But I am afraid that we may be crossing that Rubicon.
All right, reports coming in now that Russia has 2 Air Force planes transporting dozens of troops and equipment to Venezuela's main airport over the weekend, as opposition leader Juan Guaido tells the media that he's closer than ever to taking full control of the country.
Described as a quasi-military diplomatic presence in Venezuela, right?
Exactly. They're saying that they're there to support the government of Maduro at a time when you have the United States saying that they want Maduro to resign and that all options are on the table.
So that sounds good. But how much of this is really about sending Uncle Sam, sending Washington a message? We know what you guys are doing here. We understand your intervention. We just want you to know that we wear big boy pants too.
Right. It definitely seems like they're saying it without actually coming out and saying it.
If this were a chess match, I think both sides would be saying we're far away from checkmate at any point. And by the way, we got a strong hand as well.